And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to the PEO Speedwagon podcast. Thank you again for tuning in to this episode here. We're in season 2 and getting close to wrapping it up. We are joined today by Chris Dornfeld, president, co-founder over at Whistle. Thank you very much for joining us here today, Chris. You're involved in the local St. Louis kind of entrepreneurial and startup scene, and really excited to dive into what's going on over at Whistle and everything you're doing there with engaging folks and culture and people reward space and kind of how it's changing. And so thank you very much for joining, and excited to get into this.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, guys. Rick, Ryan, good to see you both.
Yeah, great to see you, bud.
It's funny to think, as we jump in here, that our initial conversation came from us, as you guys are both sipping coffee here on the video, from us just grabbing a coffee over at, I think it was Omen in Brentwood a while back. And from there, we kind of just kicked off a friendship and have seen each other, what seems like at least every other month since then. Was that almost a year ago?
Yeah. I feel sorry for you guys. You have to see me that much, but hopefully now you can listen to me. That's a little easier. Yeah, that's right.
Every time learn a little something, whether it's around the science of what you guys do or just being an entrepreneur. So I'm excited for the folks.
No, and I think that's what's really been driven the conversation and friendship is there's a lot of shared knowledge and learning. You guys are building a company, we're building a company. Just a lot of great opportunity to share information. As you guys know, there's a pretty vibrant, growing entrepreneurial ecosystem here. So I think it's great just to continue to reconnect and share some of that. What we've learned and some of the mistakes we've made over the years, and those are often your best learning opportunities. So I guess the benefit of getting a little gray hair and taking a few laps around the entrepreneurial pool.
Let's do it. We can certainly share our wins and mistakes as well along the way. So, but maybe for the folks listening, Chris, a little maybe background on yourself and Whistle too, and what you guys are doing over there, just to give them a little context.
Sure. So my background, this is I guess about the 4th startup company that I've been involved with directly, indirectly advised hundreds through some of the nonprofit work and things I've been involved with over the years. And this most recent one, we really grew from my business partner and I were running one of the largest recognition and rewards companies in the country, and realized there was some pretty interesting opportunities we thought to improve upon the business model, really beginning to apply the science around human behavior and motivation. So we actually co-founded the company with a behavioral scientist and looked at, how and why we perform in the workplace the way we do. And that was really the genesis of Whistle, was stepping back and saying, if you were going to do this, what are those most important factors, that drive better results with people in the workplace? Turns out it's not the breadth of your reward catalog or, points or gift cards. It really has to do with timing. It has to do with patterning new behavior. And it has to do with making people feel valued. And there's some ways you can do that can drive pretty significant outcomes for companies. So we've seen marked improvement in things like compliance with different forms or processes we need people to do, keeping up with change management, just adhering to protocol procedure, trying out new things, where we're seeing anywhere from 50, 100, in some cases even 800% improvement. And like patterning new behaviors, complying with reporting, using new technology. So for us, it's pretty exciting to see, we can help people be more effective in their roles in their job. We can help companies, become more profitable and successful. And the more we can align that, right, the more we all win. Everyone wants to show up doing a great job. And so Whistle is really about helping enable that within different types of companies.
Yeah, that's amazing. Would you mind, I know one of the industries that your focus is in, is construction, as well as healthcare and a few others, financial services. But what's maybe an example of someone who has an interaction with Whistle? What kind of things do they do that then they would get these rewards?
Yeah. So, there's a whole range of behaviors you can think about. Sometimes we're pulled in as people are thinking about, I'm trying to build culture. We're working with a company that's rolling out a new set of core values. And how people live into those values, we often, as companies, I've noticed over the years, define a set of values and say, this is what we want to be about. We're compassionate, we're collaborative and innovative. We're, pick your flavor of value. They're all not actually that dissimilar, although we think ours is always a little magical and bespoke. Where it often breaks down with companies is we don't really define very clearly what that means day to day. If I'm going to be collaborative, how do I behave collaboratively? I hear that and I understand it as a concept, but I might not know, does that mean I have an open door policy and people can always come talk to me? That's one way to be collaborative. Or is it I go seek out information from people and really go get their opinion? That's a very proactive way to be collaborative. So there's a range there we find. So we often work with companies to help maybe a little bit on the consulting side, not much, but define, are they really being clear about the behaviors? And where we really lean in is, great, you want to then recognize and reward behaviors that then drive your success. So that's a case around culture. We're doing a lot in construction and a lot in industry right now. It's probably our primary focus for the last couple of months because in distributed field workers, where you're on a job site, for example, 90% of those employees aren't your direct employees. They're not in your HR enrollment file. They're subcontractors or subs of subcontractors or vendor partners or, you name it. It becomes very difficult to have the same motivating effect. So I can do things with my employees, but if you're not an employee, I really don't have a lot, of pressure I can exert on you to adopt new technology or turn in a report on time or follow a safety protocol. We might issue a new procedure we want followed, on safety on a job site. That can be a little challenging. Turns out when I need someone to, let's say I want someone to take a couple of photos every day and document progress on a job site, just, show me the work that's being done so we can create a record of that. Pretty important to the business, people to understand and show that. Difficult to get everyone to do consistently. Turns out if you say, I'll buy a cup of coffee if you take a couple of photos today, you can get like 100% compliance. So we make it really easy to be able to affect that type of change. And then the science on that is we send those rewards instantly. So as soon as you're completing that action, your phone's lighting up, you're getting a little text link. People can then activate that reward immediately through their mobile device. And you're getting a little dopamine hit. So we're taking some of those elements from gamification, what we've learned in the last years from social media, beginning to apply those in the workplace where people can deploy those to cause better behavioral outcomes.
Man, that's so interesting. And when I think about values too, so many people put values on a poster at work, right? And they say, here's what we're aiming at. But, the real values are in the behaviors, like you're saying, and they exist whether they know they can put a word to them or not. And, you'd almost think like some of the best values would be derived directly from the data. You'd say, hey, here's the actual values you have right now. Here's what you're prioritizing and how you're operating. And then here's what's up on the wall that you want to get to. But so often they just kind of point to the poster and say, like, those are our values. And there might not be the data to actually show that. How much does, the data feed into how you guys, I guess, like built this and decided to do it? Because you had mentioned that you've spoken with specialists to approach it this way.
We're definitely data nerds. I mean, my business partner came from a background with building AI tools, advanced sort of logarithmic predictive models and all sorts of fun stuff in that world. So we're pretty science and data heavy. But yeah, exactly what you're describing is you can begin to think about, is this a box checking exercise? I can say I did this, I put up a poster, I talked to people about it. Or can I actually begin to implement something to measure that behavioral impact and see the behavior occurring and look at the data and say, well, who is doing that more or less? What does performance look like? In most cases, we're tackling a bigger problem for the business, which is either compliance related, which has to do with managing risk, or it's performance related, which is just am I accomplishing X number of things per hour? Those are both pretty trackable. Compliance can be, am I getting the reports processed on time and in the manner I want? Productivity is, am I getting so much of that work done? Are there that many electrical boxes installed? Are there so many deliveries on a patient floor, right? Are those happening in that sequence? So most of those things are pretty easy to measure. A little bit on the culture side or softer side, those we're often looking at data points around retention. Right. What we've shown is if you have better onboarding design and you give managers the right recognition tools, you can do things like improve employee retention by 20 to 50%, which is worth a ton, to a lot of businesses. I mean, most companies having employee turnover, you can use about 6 months of that annual compensation is about the cost of turnover. Once you factor in, the damage it creates on everyone who's still around picking up the work. I have to hire a recruiter, or I have to go through some, laborious HR process, interview a lot of people, spend a lot of time and energy doing that. So it's an expensive proposition. So we're in most cases really focused on that data because it feeds into our philosophy that the more value we can show we create for these businesses and companies, right, the more they're going to want to work with us. I don't know any business entrepreneur or business leader out there who, if you go to them and say, let me show you, I can help your business make a lot more money, and I can prove to you how I'm doing it, you're going to want to keep working with that partner, for sure. So it aligns with a little bit what we do is, using that data to its fullest extent.
Yeah, and the data behind it is incredibly compelling, and then you talk about, then you put it into the application of culture. It's just astounding. That was one of the things when we started talking about this. I was listening to the things that your organization aims to do, the technology, the way it was built, and it was like, in a lot of ways, it was like a knife to heart, because I could go back and look at times that I had miserably failed, either the people I worked for, or just the culture that I thought we were designing. Like, we had an idea in our head of what we were doing and what we wanted to build and how we wanted to drive discretionary effort from people. And then just the ways in which we put, as Rick talked about, like the things up on the wall, and didn't tie our behaviors to upholding them, right? It was like, hey, we care deeply, or we default to grit, or whatever it was. And it was like, how are we actually demonstrating that versus just pointing at this, this piece of art on the wall? And that was why I was so struck with what you guys do, the timing, the instant, that dopamine hit that comes from the instant gratification of doing good work and then immediately being rewarded from it, and seeing how that feeds culture, not just in the sense that you've set up a technology tool, but that your leaders or your organization has put the intentionality to reward you for the great work that you do. And so it was, I'm a guilty too many times and never again of delayed rewards for salespeople, where they do something good in September and they don't get any reward for it till October or November, and then they miss the opportunity to really kind of connect the impact to the reward. And I think that's just really special, because people come to an organization initially because they like what they're going to be doing, and primarily because of the income they're going to make, right? Benefits and everything else. And then culture comes down the road, because culture is just talked about, it's advertised, but then people stay more often than not for culture, even when the compensation doesn't always get to the level it needs to be, because they feel a part of something, they feel attached to a mission, and what you guys do dives right into that.
That's right, Ryan. And it speaks to you as a business leader and builder that you recognize that evolution over time. And I think that's really what makes people effective as they grow and build businesses, is they're continuing to look and learn for ways to improve. They don't assume, well, I've got it all figured out, therefore I'm just going to follow the same play pattern. I think we can all recognize the world's in this point of constant change. So I need to be thinking about my approach. Is it different? Is it more effective? But you hit on time, and that's probably the greatest variable I think is overlooked when it comes to recognition programs. As we did the research on this, I thought it was very interesting. When we studied this and found that you see about a 5% delay or decay every day in the effect of behavior when you delay a reward. So when you do those things at the end of the month or end of a quarter, it still makes us feel good to give something to someone, and it still feels good to receive it, right? So there is a benefit, but when it comes to the behavior I'm wanting to get you to pattern, that delay has pretty much destroyed that effect. You've decoupled it so much. And you can think about this if anyone's done any training with pets. I mean, you understand that timing becomes really important. We're biological creatures. We work the same way. If you want really maximum reinforcement, it's giving rewards at the moment, of that behavior.
Well, and I imagine too, then it creates this reverberating effect where if you don't do that, and I know this to be true as well in my own experience and people that I've worked with, where the next time an incentive comes up, or the next time you promote some reward for filling out forms or policies, they don't buy into it because they've already seen this story once already or twice, where like, yeah, I'm sure this is really important. You're telling me it's important to do this, yet you won't follow through on rewarding me. So how important can it really be? And thus I don't alter my behavior. So now all of a sudden, your lack of positive reinforcement in a near term is also creating a disconnect for future behaviors before they even happen.
No, that's especially true on those smaller tasks, for sure. I mean, and there's so much of that it really occurs in our daily life, whether I need to fill out sales lead form, or as I was saying earlier, a safety compliance form, or just documenting progress. I mean, you can think about how much of our day now is spent with a screen and interacting with technology, and how many, I don't know, sometimes it seems like mundane tasks we all have to do. And if you can sort of feel better about doing all those things, we're talking earlier about emotion and that connection and sense of workplace, right? If I can just feel better about these tasks, right, my whole day is a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing these mundane things and I'm suddenly, my phone's dinging going, great job. Like, here's coffee on us. Like, thanks for getting that done today. Like we can actually build systems to help us navigate this very complex world. It turns out we all feel better by doing it. And that, again, goes back to retention and driving that value. One of the interesting things, though, is you were mentioning your learning journey. I went through similar things, both of things that I did and learned from and said, well, I would do that a little differently now that I look back. But also think earlier in my career of experiences where I had, experiences I didn't think were very valuable, or, I will never treat employees that way, as I observed a boss being horrible. So I think there's a lot of value as we just really begin to think about what is that ideal experience? How do we want it to work? And that's been central to, this company we're building is how do we help other companies really create that experience that just everyone wants to be part of, and make those tools so easy to use and so accessible that it removes any barrier or reason for people not to do it.
And that's a culture you've built too, right? The fact that when you've started multiple businesses, you're in that startup mode, you're moving fast. It seems like tyranny of the urgent is the thing that drives you. Getting to know you and the way you think, and also your organization and your people, that you've provided this culture of intentionality around stopping and like, what is the problem we're actually fixing, right? Because we get this idea we're going to fix one problem, we've got it, and we're just going to charge ahead, and you step over opportunities doing so to actually do something more meaningful because you're willing to slow down and look around. And I think that's a really important lesson for us as well.
Well, I think that's probably, as I've observed working with a lot of entrepreneurs, one of the biggest mistakes or you could say opportunities people have is, do they really understand the problem they're trying to solve? Right. And we often spending a lot of time and energy working on something when we realize the destination we're trying to get to isn't really defined. Therefore, it becomes very hard to collaborate and pull people in to help you solution or, develop a better outcome. And that's just the journey we all go through of really clarifying, that destination. But I'm often stepping back. We just did it with my team this morning as they were starting to talk through this new product feature, and sort of step back and said, all right, are we clear on what we're really solving with this? Because it feels like we're meandering around. And I think the more clarity you have of that destination, just the easier it is to navigate, the team to get there.
Do you find that when you initially meet with a company that they kind of have a meandering idea of like, we want to be better, but maybe the KPIs we're actually aiming for, aren't as clear cut? You mentioned, we want to have better retention, but then maybe after engaging and trying to get people to be incentivized to move in that direction, it's actually something else, and they maybe pivot some of the incentives?
Not always. I mean, more often than not, I think they know what they're trying to impact. So it's a little. I mean, sometimes that happens. More often than not, they know we have a retention problem, and it's we're doing these things, but these things don't seem to be causing the outcome we want. We're having pizza parties. We're doing, doing this stuff. Yeah. More than that, what we're showing is if you look at the science on behavior and motivation, you're seeing the opportunity, but your application of your resources, you're spending about 90% of it poorly. Example of that is I love picking on gift cards, and I'll pick on Starbucks, even though I like their products, but they run a pretty big gift card business, and they had disclosed in some of their statements the amount of money they receive from unused gift card balances and just that waste every year is hundreds of millions of dollars. It's astounding. And we just started working with a client who they have a large population, a distributed population of about 1,400 employees around the country. And they were giving out about $2 million a year in total in gift cards, which, is a couple $100 a year per person. And we helped them audit that through a couple different gift card providers that more than 50% of that balance, the $2 million we were spending, was basically going unused, being wasted. And more or less they're making a donation to Starbucks and other major players. There are 2 or 3 big companies that were reaping the benefit of this inefficiency intentionally designed into the system. So when we could step back and say, well, why are you giving out the gift cards in the first place? What are you trying to do? And what it was we want people to feel good. It's sort of cultural impact, but really what we're after is retention. We said, all right, well, let's think about what are the things that people care about, and how could we design a reward structure that actually will drive better outcomes, better retention. And so that's really what we focus on with them. The irony is they're going to end up reducing their budget by about 25% and increasing the impact of their overall program just by their spending their resources in just that one category much more effectively. So often it's, even if I don't know what I want to do, or sometimes I do, the way I'm using my resources is just really not rooted in science, but just sort of, well, that's kind of what we do, or we check a box. I put a poster on a wall, I hand out some stuff. Therefore, I'm doing the thing, but really being intentional about the purpose of that and understanding the behaviors where the value is created.
Well, and when you and I and Rick first met, you bought me a coffee on the app, right? It was like a quick tech demo. And we were sitting at a coffee shop, but what you really gave me was like $5 or $6.
Yeah.
And that was the aha moment, because I remember many times as a sales leader sitting there trying to figure out, when we were doing gift cards or doing some sort of incentive, like what would we give this person? What would they value? And, you'd probably get to know your people enough that you didn't make the mistake of buying a non-coffee drinker a Starbucks gift card. But based on what they just accomplished or whatever small task you ran an incentive around, they might not want a Target gift card or an Amazon gift card or what have you, although they're great organizations if they want to send us all stuff more than what. No, but it's just the fact that what you're actually doing is transmitting cash for them to then make a decision to do it for themselves, whatever they want to spend that on, whatever that's important. But this cool idea of like tying it to a concept. So when we had Consortium STL and we put some cash into Whistle and to reward our speakers and, yourself, you did a fantastic job speaking at that event. And
thank you.
And, I bought everybody a like $50 beer, like the emoji or the icon or whatever you want to call it was a beer. But in reality, I was just giving them a little $50 gift in appreciation for the time that they had spent with us to go do whatever they want with that. And that I thought that was so super smart, because that is a chief complaint I hear, and also a dilution of culture that you don't know me well enough to know that I'd rather just have $200 in cash than a $200 Target gift card, because I could take my spouse out to dinner or my kids to go do this, and it's just so much more meaningful.
Yeah, and it's really, our philosophy in that is we need to meet people where they are. As we studied this issue of building culture, leadership, you talked earlier about leaders putting stuff, posters up on the wall. There's about a 20-25% difference in where leaders often perceive their organization as and where people really are. Meaning, if you think about like Maslow's hierarchy, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, right? Where if I'm worried about my basic safety, I'm not going to be able to think about these higher order functions if my basic needs aren't being met. And so on that scale, typically leaders are focused on these issues, and your rank and file employees, and this is especially true in blue collar environments, they're worried about, can I put gas in my truck, or, do I have food to put on the table this week? Or so they're going to perceive that $10 or $20 very differently. So a lot of this is about giving people that flexibility. But as you said, the emotional benefit of, it'd be a little weird to walk out of a sales meeting and say, great, thanks for your time. Here's $10. Let me hand you $10. It's actually what we're doing. But we give it in a gesture of, thank you for your time. Let me buy you a cup of coffee. It feels very thoughtful, right? Appreciative. So we're giving the best of both worlds. We're able to give that sort of impression of this gift, but really the flexibility and the sort of real-time sort of distribution ability of cash, which affords people, if they need to use it in different ways, they can. It's proven to be very effective within employee populations.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I make sure I'm understanding. So you're saying, like you come in and they say, hey, we've got, pizza for everybody. Ultimately, you're saying that like, hey, we've got a diverse group of folks here with varying needs. One person in there might be like, man, I'd really like to just put this towards putting gas in my truck. I don't necessarily need a pizza party. heck, I brought my lunch today and I didn't even know we're doing this, and they're just kind of
Oh,
putting this like
it's
blanket.
worse than that. I mean, expand
Yeah.
that, Rick, and think about, if you're a population, let's say you do this for 100 people, or, what out of every 100 people are lactose intolerant or gluten intolerant, right? So
Yeah.
10%, 20% of that group can't actually eat pizza, right? And so they not only interpret it as, well, I brought my lunch, that's disappointing, but there's part of me that's like, I'm lactose intolerant. Like,
Yeah.
why do you keep getting pizza for the office?
And
I can't
100% of
eat
them
this.
have to say thank you.
Yeah. And so you quickly realize, in a workforce that is becoming more and more diverse by age, by ethnicity, by culture, by background, by geography, trying to create these one-size-fits-all solutions for a lot of these problems just doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. So the more flexibility you can give people, right? So balance that gesture. I want to give it to everyone, but I want everyone to be able to, extract value from it. You can't beat, frankly, cash as a mechanism to do that. And when we've surveyed populations in different industries, we surveyed a couple hundred construction workers. Turns out like 90% of them, actually I think like 93%, just preferred cash as a gift. Like, no, I don't actually want pizza. I'd rather just have the, $12. It's easy, it's better for me in my life and what I want to do. So again, we're trying to meet people where they are as we think about building culture, building organizations, and making people more successful and feeling valued.
Well, and making an organization, going back to the point, putting more impact around the resources that organization's deploying. To buy pizza for 100 people is not cheap. It's going to get a lot of money, especially with inflation. So now the fact that you did that and you fed some people and some people were happy, but people walk out of that, we'll call it area, cafeteria, what have you, some having good experiences, some having bad, some having no reaction whatsoever. That is, the ROI on that event is just vastly lower. And you could have gotten it all. You could have one enveloped everybody and met them where they are and had a group of people that go, my leaders are in tune. The fact that they've gone and resourced a technology like Whistle to be able to do this, but remove Whistle from it. Just the fact that you're trying to do things for me specifically and understand me well enough, that is how you get people to give you discretionary effort. Even though you're incenting some of this, that's okay. I think discretionary effort can be somewhat incentivized. And you're also trying to help organizations just take care of the people, which above anything else is the most important.
Yeah, you got it. And it's really, it's especially effective if you think about the habituation of behavior, which is, I need you to try or do something new. I need you to get comfortable doing this thing. We're rolling out a new technology, new operating procedure. We're only seeing an increase in the amount of change in our lives, right? I think we can all agree change is now this constant that's just, it's ongoing. There's perpetually new apps to download, new things to try. I've got a new upgrade to the HR system. I got to get everyone to go fill out some form in a new way. Right. That's constant. And the amount of turnover because of labor pressure is not going to change either. So we have these two forces of constantly evolving, digital landscapes, technology impacting our business, and then constant pressure on labor and keeping people. So that necessitates we're going to be exposed to a lot of new things, and we need tools to help do that. We are biologically wired to be resistant to things we don't know or feel unfamiliar, right? We don't run into dark caves. We have a little caution because we're not sure if a bear's in there. Like, this is ingrained in who we are. So I'm going to have a little bit of stress and anxiety every time you ask me to do something new, and that creates resistance. So we're a counterforce to that when you can say, I want you to do this, but here's a little reward. And what the science shows is actually you're a lot better off doing a smaller high-frequency rewards and recognizing and tying those to behaviors than waiting till the end of the month and giving a big bonus. So it's actually a lot more cost-effective for the business, and it turns out to be a lot more motivating for the employee and also financially beneficial for the employee. So you check all the boxes if you can repattern how you think about using these tools and these resources.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, and again, that was a big moment listening to you talk about it, is the structures and the approaches that we've taken in the past were almost 100% wrong in a lot of ways. We did big delayed impacts to, or rewards to get impact immediately that was disconnected versus the opposite of that, which is short spurts and potentially lower because you're doing it more frequently and you're getting a higher level of value. So it's not shocking that, organizations get it wrong. It's just shocking perhaps to the extent over time how wrong it's been. And then when you hear about it, you go, that does make sense, because I like that in every aspect of my life. Whether it's
Right.
gratitude from kids or a spouse, like when you buy a kid an ice cream cone and they say thank you and they really mean it, like in that moment, that warms your heart, and that's enough. So you see this evidence in your relationships, but we haven't really applied structure or to our own relationships around this with people we work with or work for us. And so it's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's just shocking that it was so missed. And that's why I think when you unveil what you guys do and the science that you have behind it, it is such an eye-opening moment to go, yeah, we had it completely wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And sadly, I think it's been perpetuated. There's a lot of stakeholders who are invested in the current systems and efficiencies, right, who make a lot of money out of that efficiency. And so there's partners who are complicit in not allowing this to evolve. And that's really where we saw the opportunity, was saying this doesn't really feel great, because it's clear there's better ways to help company and help people in this sort of rewards and recognition world than what's been done. And you realize, well, that's how they're making their money. Therefore, they're not going to be very motivated to cause the change. And often the employers are focused on so many different problems and challenges. They're relying on these partners to, be acting in good faith.
They're focused elsewhere, or it's just a thinking system that they believe in. That if it's the employee's fault, they're not responding to this incentive. I must have the wrong person. They have the wrong mindset, right? They shift it versus going, well, what am I as a leader not doing to get this person bought in? And what approaches am I taking are just not connecting? Because I hired this person. I thought they were good. I saw their history, and now they're not thriving underneath me. They just must have the wrong mindset. And that couldn't be a more wrong narrative.
Yeah, and there, it's not completely without truth, right? There are people in bad hires, to your point,
100%.
but it's really easy to take that small percentage and then dismiss a whole lot of other people, with that same broom, just as you said, and say, well, it's clearly, that's the problem. It's not this program. Because solving that problem is probably harder than, so people are resistant to change. I mean, that's a biological
Ryan,
fact.
There's still hope for us that we will both update our CRM then. All right on time. I think there's hope.
I think it's a motivation issue, Rick. What I've learned from this is that the reason I'm not good at putting notes is you have not incented me to do it, as well. I've actually learned.
So I have learned we need to realign our values around that behavior, and we can certainly do that.
Yep.
It is interesting to think about, though. If it's just the two of you are working through these things, what would it take, Ryan, to be more consistent doing it? Like, what would elevate that to say, I can get it done? Clearly a smart, capable guy.
Yeah.
I'm the same way, but there's things I prefer to spend my time doing and things I prefer not to, right? They're emotionally driven decisions overriding my logical part of my brain. And so there are tools that can help with that.
Yeah. Even when it's an interesting entrepreneurial conversation where, as the entrepreneurs, like, we should be doing the best thing in the interest of our business. And oftentimes you do. It's that emotional thing. Like, I'm going to shift my focus to something else. Like, putting notes into our CRM isn't the most important thing now, but it is something, in full vulnerability, like Rick has asked me to do many, many times. Like I said, I need to be incented, clearly. No, but in reality, there's that tyranny of the urgent pops back up, and I think it's real.
And you're finding not only that pressure of other things for your time and energy, but it's a delayed gratification. I mean, the problem is I can put all that data in, and that there's no real benefit until, further down the road. Therefore, that time factor plays in, because I have no motivating effect till much further down the line. And we as humans, and I think most biological creatures, we're not motivated well that way. It's just not a great form for us. We need constant firing. I mean, this is what social feeds have taught us more than anything, is it's not only interesting, but can become addictive.
Yeah.
And you can even populate ads and put a bunch of junk in there. But because I'm so habituated, I'll keep going, right? I'll go through those things. We can apply some of that same thinking in the workplace. It'd be fun, Rick. We should test this. We should give Ryan some incentives for getting his
I love that. We'll get
sales
the
and
app set up
sales
and
leads
some
into the
coffees.
CRM system. Yeah.
That's great. Hey, I wanted to ask, maybe looking forward a little bit, you've seen the industry go through so much change and evolution. Do you have any insights on, where you think it might be heading sort of next or in these
Yeah.
next decade?
Yeah. I'll go back to those two themes I mentioned earlier, and maybe some observations from that. I think we have this labor pressure, which creates a lot of interesting challenges for companies. I don't see that. Nothing I've read says that's going to change, right? So hiring and keeping good people is going to be difficult. And that increases stress on the ecosystem, right? It increases stress on the people who are still there, who don't leave because they have to pick up the work. It means more new people are coming in. It's just, right, it's a stressing factor to everyone. And then I think you have this change as constant sort of, becoming the norm, that we're just in a point of constantly upgrading. We're moving to subscription-based services and models, which means they're constantly evolving. There's new feature, things that pop up. So our world is about change. I think that for a lot of people that causes anxiety. I think we see that play out publicly, and how people look at wanting to go back in time. Right, I think it had a lot to do with the stress of all the change that's occurring. It feels overwhelming at times. So I look at those two big forces, and then thinking about how does it impact the work experience. I think we're gonna have to be more flexible in our work arrangements, right, to accommodate for people. I don't think this means necessarily we're going to be all entirely work from home, but I do think things like I have a little more control over my schedule and flexibility, right? That if I want to do stuff with my kids, or I've got a co-parent, right? I think we're gonna have to be more just accommodating to the reality of all the challenges of people's lives. I think we're just beginning to figure that out. I think businesses are going to have to be more intentional about skill development and career pathing, really thinking about how do they provide those educational tools and resources so people can feel like they're growing in a role. That's historically, I would say, been, for most businesses, a pretty passive action. I think it's going to have to become a pretty active action, because I don't think you're going to keep people unless they really feel like they're growing. And I think that's especially true as you go into the younger populations and workforces. That also then ties back into digital upskilling and technology, right? This constant use of new tools, how AI is going to get used. And then going back to all that stress, I think wellness and sort of safety, this psychological safety and feeling sort of healthy mentally, with all that stress is only going to increase the need for more support and resources around that. I don't see any of these stress factors from the environment to the work experience reducing in the next 10 years. And so I'm thinking about how do I help keep people sort of mentally healthy so they can bring their full self to work, moves from, again, a box I check because there's a resource somewhere. I mean, I've seen this mostly play out as like, there's a phone number. If you want to call, a resource is available to you. That's got to move from a passive sort of sport, if you will, to an active sport for the business. It's got to move up the priority stack. And I think things like recognition will play a bigger role in really helping influence and enable and support people through that change and help them feel valued and feeling a sense of purpose in the workplace. So I think those are four big outcomes of those factors going forward.
Yeah, and it sounds like you think there will be more of employers meeting their employees where they are, essentially having those proactive outreaches and, also finding ways to incentivize them with things they truly want and need.
Yeah. I think it's about really listening to employees. I mean, I'm always amazed, as I've done consulting in the past, as I work with employers, in the HR world, and they'll come up with these complex problems. And the first question I always ask is, well, what did your employees say when you asked them about this? Maybe a third of them have surveyed employees, and that's about the extent of it. They're like, well, I in my engagement survey I did 4 months ago, I could kind of see this data point. I don't know. I've found 99% of people, if you go up and ask them, hey, what do you need to help cause this outcome? Or what would be, they'll just tell you, oh, well, this process gets in my way and it frustrates me every day. Like, oh, let's look at that process. Or I'm struggling at home because I don't have, I can't figure out how to get to work easily. So it takes, 3 buses for me to get here. Okay. These are all solvable things, but they're not the same thing for an entire population. And that's really where I think the opportunity exists, is to begin to individualize my support for people, to meet them where they are. And I think technology is allowing that to occur in ways that are really interesting and exciting that we couldn't actually manage before.
I think of it like the last mile in delivery and logistics. It's like that's something that seemed pretty complicated for a long time until it's finally cracked with technology and routing and being efficient and quite literally meeting people where they are. And it sounds like that's kind of getting into the reward space too. And that last mile of what we actually need to get this done and meet everybody is
Yeah, Rick,
finally
I think that's a
coming.
great metaphor. It's a great way to describe it. It's exactly right. It's that last mile delivery of those services and support to create those experiences for people that we want to create for them and they want to receive.
That's awesome.
Well, and it's too is what I mean. Those 4 points are. It's staggering to know what you need to do, but that is the task at hand. Is you need to meet people where they are, and so like this concept of what in the 50s and 60s, HR was called personnel, and then it became human resources, and now it became people, human capital, and now really it is one-on-one like people engagement. Like you have to be serving each person individually if you're really like living your values and your culture that you described. And I think that goes back to that initial point. It's one thing to say that that's what you think, but it's another thing to do that and actually live those values. And it's
That's
okay
right.
to call out, hey, I can't do it on my own. I need technology. I need support to be able to give our people our best effort. And it's just that's the calling for all people at this point, all people leaders, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're the CEO of a, Fortune 500 company, or, that you've got to evolve because people are our most important asset. And as such, they need our best effort.
And it's so worth the investment. I mean, you guys have both been part of organizations. You've been around enough. You see when you have great cultures and you don't, right? You see the effect, you feel the effect, you see the performance level improve. I mean, you know what it's like, man, when we're firing all cylinders as a team, just how much we can accomplish and what we can get done. It's just because it feels a little intangible and a little complex. We don't often lean in the same way, right? Our CFOs don't often fund those things the same way. But man, is it powerful when you start getting that right, for everybody.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yep. That's when it doesn't feel like work.
That's
Nobody
right.
thinks of it that way.
That's the goal.
right.
It's just folks working together and living their values of the organization as people. So, well, Chris, I want to thank you so much for taking time to jump in here and speak with us and doing the PEO Speedwagon. We'll have to get some swag sent your way here soon.
I'll take it. That's great.
And
Yeah.
But I just really appreciate it. We'll put every link to Plug Whistle in our description down below if you guys want to go check out and speak with Chris. And you can of course find us over on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music as well. But thank you again, Chris, for being here.
Yeah, it was great talking to you guys. Great to see you. I look forward to our next coffee.
Yeah.
And congratulations on all the success and momentum with what you're doing. It's been great to work with you.
Yeah, thank you, bud. It's been great working with you, and I'm invigorated just by our conversation today, just thinking about like what we can do differently. And I think that's the question you pose and provide solutions to. And so really appreciate the
Rick Ryan's just excited. You're going to start buying him coffee to
right.
enter a step of the CRM. He's already motivated.
He's paying for the next coffee date. Yeah, he's got us all covered.
Neon beer hug for every completed sale.
There you go.
We're already getting the ball rolling.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Great. Have a great day.
You too.